So I now take the opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker today. Professor Florence Choheire Muhanguzi is an associate professor of women and gender studies and senior researcher in fields of gender and social development here at Makerere University. She has extensive experience in gender and feminist research in areas including education, sexual and reproductive health, social protection, sexual and gender-based violence, women's economic empowerment, and climate change. She has vast experience in both quantitative and qualitative research, and part of why we invited her is that combination, of women and gender studies and a strong anchoring in research, methodology. So she has published numerously, that's why she's a professor, and we are really happy to have her. I think we couldn't think of a better, keynote speaker than Florence Choheire Muhanguzi. Florence, you're most welcome. I'll now invite you to actually make your presentation, and we'll proceed from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Genetic Associate Professor Twichirize Genetic. Thank you for fishing me out and for giving me the opportunity to interact with your team and other scholars at Makerere in Rwanda, Tanzania. It's great to meet Anne, Eric, my boss, Zena, Charles, Cecilia, on this important project. I think I'll share my screen. Let me share my screen. Yeah, so Genetic invited me to speak about integrating gender in social research and social work.
Sorry, Florence, can you put in slide in presentation mode? Is that possible?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Is this okay?
Perfect.
Okay, good. So I'll be speaking about integrating gender in social research and see how social work education comes in. This is an area, of course, as you heard from the introduction, it is an area that I'm passionate about and what I've been working on for the last 20 years also, in terms of research, but also teaching at Makerere, supervision of both graduate and undergraduate research work. Okay. So my speech will largely focus on, we shall talk about the key concepts, some of those key words or concepts that we normally come across when we are reading research that talks about gender. Briefly talk about the theoretical foundations of gender-focused research, the rationale, why gender, why is gender important in research, in social research, what are the key characteristics of gender research or gender-focused research, and we also look at how do we integrate gender across the research process over the different steps that we go through in research, and then some of the key aspects as we look at integrating gender. There are ethical issues that we have to take into account, and then we look at gender in social research then end our discussion. When you're talking about just gender-focused research, there are some key concepts. Some key concepts. First of all, before we look at this, what is gender-focused research? Gender-focused research basically is that research that integrates a gender perspective or gender dimension in the whole research process, taking into account sex and gender as main variables, but also ensuring that these are presented in the context, ensuring that data is disaggregated based on sex, but also gender. There is usually the tradition has been to disaggregate data as researchers, to disaggregate data by male and female. That is if you have moved beyond the generic presentation. And often we forget the aspect of gender. And so if you're doing gender-focused research, the issue of gender is very key. Gender as a key variable is very important in terms of ensuring that you report on the disparities and the factors that cause those disparities. Gender-focused research is informed by feminism, and so that's why sometimes we bring in the aspect of feminist research. So when you are reading about gender-focused research, you will not miss the word feminism or feminist research, which basically is about studying the social conditions of women in a sexist, a male stream, a patriarchal society. Gender-focused research, rather feminist research, helps us to enlighten us about the taken for granted sexist practices and gender blindness of practices by society in programming, in the day-to-day interactions. Moving beyond that, then you look at research, you look at publications, you look at government programs and other things. And so when you are doing research which is feminist, you're focusing on understanding the social conditions of women in those spaces, making sure that the conditions that are often ignored and silenced are brought in the limelight to understand what the experiences of women are concerned. And that is the genesis of gender-focused research. And with feminist research, the aim is to ensure that the structures and conditions that contribute to inequalities are brought to light, to enlighten community about the factors that generate inequalities in society. But also feminist research is empowering. It is meant to empower women and to give them a voice to speak about the social life from their own perspective, so that those silences about their experiences are brought to light and addressed. The other concepts that we cannot miss to interface with gender-focused research is gender-sensitive research. And this basically is about, it's not research about women, but rather it is research that takes into account the gender as a significant variable in the study. Research that looks at men and women having different roles and being impacted on differently by the social experiences. It's research that looks at power relations between women and men and how these greatly influence the perspectives, their perspectives in development. And so when you're doing research that is gender focused, you really have to take into account those aspects, the roles, the powers, the power relations, and the structures that animate those power relations. Gender sensitive research methodology is meant to be more participatory, and the participatory aspect of it is to contribute to empowering the people, to empowering the women in particular, to allow the participants, the women and men, to identify, analyze the problems that are affecting them, understand the causes, and be able to find solutions to those issues or problems. And that is where it becomes, empowering, allowing women and men to be part and parcel of the whole process of the research, process. The other concept that we normally use is gender responsiveness or gender responsive research, where in this case, you're going beyond identifying the gender-based differences and the do no harm approach to making a conscious effort to addressing the gender and social inequalities. And here, this is where we bring in the innovations or the experimental sort of kind of research, the action-oriented research, moving beyond the theory to the practice to address the gender and social inequalities that you have identified on the specific issue you are dealing with. And then gender responsive research also is more or less similar to gender transformative research. The difference here is that with gender transformative research, you are moving beyond improving the well-being of the individual, but looking at transforming the power dynamics and the structures and the social norms that are the root causes of gender-based inequalities. And actually, currently, this is where we are moving to. There is the whole question about, so what? You have done research, so what? And so most of the current studies now, or what is coming up is gender, what we call gender transformative research, ensuring that, in addition to identifying the gender-based inequalities, the structures, the norms that have been known to be the root causes of those disparities need to be, addressed to ensure that we have transformation, we have change, and that is Hello,
Florence, yes, yeah, we can hear you now. We had lost you.
I saw a message saying unmute or stay muted.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was talking about gender transformative research and saying that currently we are moving towards that kind of approach because of the need to make change, to transform society, for us to be able to attain gender equality and attain social change, which is the essence of gender-focused research. We need to transform the power dynamics, the structures, the social norms, which are, which are the root causes of those gender-based inequalities. And so gender transformative research is gaining more popularity these days. And that is the way to go if we are to attain gender equality. The other concept that often is misinterpreted in research, but also in most of the writings, is the lack of differentiating between sex and gender. And so in most cases, you find in our tools where you are asking for sex, but you are putting it as gender. And so I felt maybe we needed to look at this, what is the difference between the two, and understand what that means in our research process when we are using the two concepts. And of course, I know that we might know, but just to highlight the difference, that so that when you are using it in your research, in your tools, then you know exactly what you are referring to. When we talk about sex, we are referring to the biological makeup of male and female, which is relatively fixed, save now technology that has come, but otherwise should be relatively fixed. And then when we talk about gender, we are talking about the social norms, we are talking about the expected roles of men and women, what it means to be masculine and feminine. And we know that this can change. And so when you are using it in your research, it is important to know the context within which you're using it and how you're defining it in your research. Then there is the other issue of what is a gender issue. We usually use it loosely, but without stopping to think about what it is that it means. And so when we talk about gender issues, or what a gender issue is, basically there are three basic elements. And here we are talking about a gender gap. And that is where you are measuring the inequality, the inequality, any particular inequality around socioeconomic indicators, looking at differences in any aspect of the status of women and men. Here I can give an example. For instance, if you are looking at poverty, having more women who are poor than men, or more men who are poor, than women. And these gender gaps usually come about because of the differences in roles, the differences in needs, the differences in access and control over resources, but also without forgetting the power relations. And then the other aspect of gender issues is gender discrimination. You talk about gender discrimination, which often results from stereotypical beliefs that give or prescribe different treatment for men and women because of their positioning in society. Then the third aspect is gender oppression, that brings in the aspect of inferior treatment of one sex. And because of that, there is an equal distribution of resources, an equal distribution of power, there is injustice, and the like. So when we talk about gender issues, usually what we think about is the gender gap, the differences between men and women in the experiences. You're talking about gender discrimination because of the positioning in society. You're also talking about, you know, gender oppression. And the other common concept in gender-focused research is gender stereotypes, and these basically are generalized. It is they are generalized views or preconceptions about attributes, about characteristics, or roles that ought to be possessed by or performed by women or men. You know, for instance, the thinking or the belief that like domestic work is for women. Women are supposed to be ABCD, men are supposed to be expected to be ABCD or to do ABCD. And, you know, there is some sort of ascription to an individual, specific attributes and characteristics because of her or him being a membership of a specific social group. And gender stereotyping is a practice that usually, you know, creates sexism in research, and it can lead to having bias, but also not being able to present the voices of women and men as they should be, as far as you know, research is concerned. Basically, those are just a few concepts that we normally meet in research. There are many others. Of course, I can't go through all of them, but I thought maybe we could just highlight those. As you can see, those people on the picture, you know, the men are here meeting, the women are there fetching water, but you know, they are saying women are too busy. That is like a stereotype. Women are too busy to discuss water matters. You know, decision making around such matters is by that kind of information you collect, which also impacts on the actions that come out of the information that you collect. The next thing, I can't move my slide. I don't know why. Is it my, oh, I think it is my internet. So when you are looking at these concepts, there is, you know, it is a continuum as we think about gender-focused research. There is research that is exploitative, research that is accommodative, research that is transformative. So when you do research that is exploitative, you are looking at research that reinforces and takes advantage of the gender inequalities and stereotypes, but also and then accommodative research is you are working around the gender differences and adjusting towards the gender differences. But we want to make sure that we do research that is transformative, research that has a critical examination of gender norms and dynamics, research that strengthens and creates systems that support gender equality, research that strengthens and creates equitable gender norms and dynamics, research that is geared towards changing inequitable gender norms and dynamics. And that's when we will be able to attain our goal of gender equality and better development outcomes. So this is like the main goal for gender focused research. So where are we coming from? What are the theoretical foundations of gender focused research? I just maybe to say something which I should have said at the beginning is that as I present this, I'm making assumptions that some of the terms and issues we may have come across them, and I will just go through, but mainly focus on those that relate to gender-focused research and feminist research. If if you're social researchers, these terms may not be new. It is something that we usually want to think about. The theoretical foundation of your research is very key because it helps you to know it helps you to design, have an appropriate research design, have an appropriate methods for you to be able to generate the kind of knowledge that you have. And so there are four main elements in the research process, and these are terms that we normally fear. I see most of my students, when you at the beginning, this is what we normally begin with, and those first lectures are really, they're usually not, they usually fear some of these terms. They are not terms that we need to fear. The research process is founded on the nature of reality, which is normally termed as ontology. And you are asking yourself, what is the nature of reality? Is the reality that I'm researching about objective? Is it factual? Is it constructed? Is it subjective? What does the research that you want to do focus on? And that is very important in terms of you being able to choose a topic, an appropriate topic, but also choose an appropriate method. The other aspect is the epistemological principles of your research, and here we are talking about the nature of knowledge. We are looking at, how do we know what we know? What is the way in which the reality is known? What kind of knowledge are we looking at for research? It is also related to the above. Are we looking at experiences? Are we looking at numbers, And then the epistemological stance helps us, informs the kind of methodology that we take, the research design and the methods that we want to take up. Asking ourselves, how do we gain that kind of knowledge about the world that we are studying? How is the research constructed? What is the research strategy that is going to give us the kind of knowledge or the kind of reality that we want to study? And then this helps us to design or to select the different methods that are appropriate, the instruments that are appropriate for our study. And the ontological and epistemological principles are organized into paradigms, which guide everyday processes. And basically, a paradigm is a set of propositions that explain how the world is perceived. It is a philosophical stance that informs the methodology that guides the research process. We know that most of the traditional social science research has been, positivist and moving away from that, we have symbolic interactionism, ethnomethodology, and for us, with gender-focused research, we look at feminism. It is informed by feminist theory or feminism. So we can look at how these are relating the elements of research and then the paradigms. When we look at the feminist research or gender-focused research, it is informed by feminism and feminist epistemology, and the methodology that that is usually valued under feminist research is qualitative because of the kind of information, the process that you go through to be able to get what it is that you want to get. The feminist or gender-focused research is grounded within feminist epistemology that argues that the traditional or conventional social science research often ignored and excluded women in social research. That is like the history, the roots of gender-focused research, and just added women to male knowledge, where findings from the research on men are generalized to women. And questioning not only how knowledge is produced, but also who produces it and how it is used. With some arguments that when you look at feminist research, there are arguments that this is research that is conducted on women, about women, and by women. To bring in the aspect that who is producing the knowledge and who is using the knowledge, highlighting the fact that what is named as universal knowledge is actually male knowledge, and trying to bring up a scholarship that criticizes the male-centered view of knowledge production in social science research that has been the tradition. And so feminist research and gender-focused research comes up to try and address those weaknesses within social science research of undermining or muting women's voices in research, to deal with the androcentric stance of the traditional social science research. So the central argument around gender-focused research is taking on the feminist epistemology, which reflects on perspectives of women, perspectives of the knower, perspectives of the subject, to understand not only how social relations of gender shape knowledge practices, but also how these relationships should play a big role in creating knowledge. And so the linkage between those big terms is that, ontology informs methodology as to the nature of reality and what is social research. Then epistemology informs, methodology about the nature of knowledge, about what counts as the fact, and also the paradigms. And so, feminist epistemology therefore informs the kind of methodology that is taken under gender-focused research. The type of methods that we use as we shall see. And based on that, we find that gender-focused research is cross-disciplinary. It is a cross-disciplinary field that cuts across all disciplines, and it is rooted within, feminist research, as I said earlier. Requires researchers to take into account the context and relationships that shape the production of knowledge, to be able to be concerned about the subjective forms of knowledge. It has a tradition of questioning, exploring, but also exposing those gender stereotypes and norms that govern the understandings of gender in society. It is a starting point. Gender is a starting point, and with a focus on how genders, whereas the body, sex, the body and biology, in other words, the sex, the female and male, how these are manifested in culture and society, and with a critical analysis of the various power structures in culture. And so gender researchers, ideally, we study societies, we study lives and experiences of people, especially those who are marginalized and have received little scholarly attention. Evidence shows that women's voices are quite often, traditionally have not been given adequate attention. So that is, the genesis of gender-focused research. It is often positioned at the interface between gender, ethnicity, sexuality, and disability, which we often look at, refer to as, intersectionality. And so here you are looking at the other aspects of life that interact with this individual woman to influence the experiences, the different experiences that that women and men experience. So beyond being a woman and a man, there are other positions that we hold in society that influence our experiences, and that is very important in gender-focused research. Why gender-focused research? It is an important tool for generating information on the various aspects of life, being able to identify gender issues, and being able to, bring out the gender inequalities and so that this can inform development. It is needed to create social change. Social change and social transformation is a key aspect of gender-focused research, because the data, the information that we generate should be able to influence policymakers, should be able to contribute to gender-sensitive policies and programs that address both women and men's needs. In other words, gender-focused research gives us the problem in its entirety. It gives us a better understanding of what the problem is that needs to be addressed. It helps us to reduce bias, because it allows for women and men's voices to be heard and to explore the important details that never get known if you do not engage with men and women. Because with gender-focused research, inclusion of women as participants and men is important, and therefore it brings out the experiences of different women in the different hierarchies, and helps us to understand the power structures in society that often creates those inequalities. And therefore, when we use gender-focused research, it helps us to overcome some of those biases.
Is it Mai? Are you hearing her? Huh?
We're losing her.
But are you hearing her? You're muted, but are you hearing her?
No, aspect of that not all women hear her. Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, but your voice was breaking.
Sorry. Let me just check my internet. Can you hear me now? Is it?
Yes,
okay?
It's better. Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's okay.
So I was saying that it helps us to reduce bias by bringing about the unique experiences of both women and men on how they experience the world, because we know that they experience the world differently, and so with that, then we are able to address the different aspects of women, but also it helps us to see the unique life experiences of different different categories of women and men, not putting them in one basket and assuming that women are the same or men are the same. Gender-focused research requires us to deeply understand the unique experiences, and that's when you'll be able to address the issues that pertain to their lives. It uses methodologies that empower. Usually the methodologies that we value in gender-focused research, those methodologies that are participatory and can contribute to empowering people. People are able to learn from each other. Men and women are able to analyze the issue, understand what the causes of the issue are. and then be able to find, solutions. Sorry about that. I need to take some water. Yeah, so the methods that we value under in gender-focused research are those that are empowering, that are participatory. And allow the participants to express themselves. It also helps us to address the excuse me. To be able to address the gaps that exist in conventional social science research, those shortcomings. Social science research has been known to be generic, not recognizing sex and gender as key variables. And so gender-focused research helps us to deal with that. The issue of gender neutrality and consequent failure to provide gender-sensitive data that is dealt with, failing to disaggregate our data and analyze it. You find most of social science research or conventional social research is generalized. It's too general, and you're not able to understand, the experiences of women and men. And so gender-focused research ideally is supposed to help us deal with that. The issue of sexism is dealt with. And with sexism, we are looking at is one of the key critiques about social research, the way the institutionalized stereotypes, the beliefs or attitudes around one gender or one sex as being inferior to or less variable than the other is one of the critiques of conventional social research does not take into account gender as a key variable. Sexism also refers to any institutionalized, stereotypical, prejudicial beliefs as well as actions that present, when you present one gender as inferior and then discriminate it in your research, in your work, then that is where sexism comes in. And usually it comes out through a number of practices, and androcentrism is one of them, where you find that the world is perceived and presented from a male-centered view, where women are presented as passive objects rather than active persons or agents. And you find that the world is presented in an androcentric way, and that is one of the aspects of sexism, but also the issue of overgeneralization, the issue of double standards, where you are using different standards or different instruments to measure issues relating to males and females, where you are ignoring one sex as being important, where you know, issues of feminism, and this is a particular case where gender insensitivity, where there is gender insensitivity, and it refers to a common practice of referring, you know, to families, when in fact the question is about men or women or members of the family, but you know, you treat the family as your unit of analysis. You assume that all family members are uniformly, you know, affected. And a good example is like where most of these surveys look at a household as a unit of analysis, and within that household, you pick on the head of the household as representing the whole family, failing to know that members within that household have different experiences and could actually give different perspectives on that particular issue you might be studying. There is also the issue of sex appropriation, and this is a problem derived from the application of double standards, and it largely relates to attitudes and expectations that assign behavior patterns and traits or attributes that are considered appropriate to a particular gender. So that the sexism is a serious issue. Most times it is subtle but very complex, and can influence the data that you bring out, but also the actions or the interventions that you might suggest based on the data that you've collected. And therefore, with regard to gender-focused research, we do take that as something that we need to deal with in research. There are issues around, you know, operation, where you are judging males as being by nature most appropriate to lead and dominate and control. That is sexism once that comes up in your research. Issues of considering males as strong and competent, you know, this is where the stereotypes now come in. Supposing women need to be protected and treated gently and lovingly by men, you know, that is all sexism when you see it in your research. You know, believing that, for instance, women need men to care for them and provide for them because they are weak and helpless. All that is informed by the attitudes and the norms, discriminatory norms around what a woman is and what a man is. And when you bring it into research, then you're bringing in, you know, sexist ideas, stereotypes that may not give you appropriate information. These are like the key characteristics of gender-focused research. Gender analysis is very key in gender-focused research. Taking, you know, doing systematic gathering and examining information on gender differences, on social relations, trying to understand and redress the inequalities. Getting the definitions of gender versus women correct, straight, not equating gender with women, and understanding that women are not a single homogeneous, category, but to know that, women and men take different identities, and these identities could influence the way they experience the world. Then inclusion and diversity is a key characteristic of gender-focused research, where you are involving all actors and the target groups, your survey, ensuring that your target groups, your survey groups are all as diverse as possible, attending to all voices, giving attention to including the voices of all the different categories of people that you have, especially the marginalized groups in your research. Doing research that empowers, I already talked about it, using methods that empower, using the bottom-up research techniques. Then being able to critique the standard social science research, particularly those theories and methods that do not allow participatory engagement with the research participants. Gender-focused research requires that we analyze the power hierarchies and be able to take action to address the power inequalities between the researcher and the researched. And this is very important. It is important to understand that as a researcher and the researched, usually there are those power differences. Often as a researcher, you come into this community as someone who is knowledgeable, is coming from another category of people, and then you have to make sure that those power hierarchies have been, dealt with to be able to interact with your research participants. It is interdisciplinary. Topics and methods draw from many different academic fields, and it emphasizes the multiple dimensions of the problems that are being studied. Use of non-traditional methods is one of the things that we value in gender-focused research, because these non-traditional methods help or allow for women to express themselves, to give their voices. It allows for those marginalized communities, the illiterate, to be able to also air out their voices as research participants. Some of these are like life histories, personal histories, and the like. And finally, gender-focused research looks at research as a political action because of the fact that the knowledge production should ideally go beyond research for the sake of increasing knowledge and information, but it should be research to change, to transform, research that is aimed at advocacy to have concrete impacts on society, concrete impact on policy, on programs to be able to better the lives of women. So ideally, the end goal for gender-focused research is creating social change, changing the social institutions, the structures, the cultures that that have been known to create gender discrimination against women and improving the lives of women. That said, how do we integrate research? How do we integrate gender into research or in gender in research? We know that the research process there are some key steps. Formulating the research problem is one of them. And this one it draws on literature review. It is from literature review that you're able to formulate your problem or your question, have your objectives, construct your hypothesis, and then your theoretical and conceptual framework. Then from that, then you conceptualize your methodology, your design, the methods, and then analyze, interpret your data, and then communicate your findings. And so the presentation format, the language we use, and the implications of the findings are very important. And in this case, as I have already mentioned, for gender-focused research, we aim at creating social change. And so the ways in which we communicate our findings should be looking towards that goal. And of course, we start with choosing a topic and objectives. And when we are choosing a topic and objective, our main question is, what is the gender issue that we are dealing with here? Who are the key stakeholders? Are they, women, men? Are they policymakers? Are they community members? Are they government officials? Who are these key stakeholders? And for whom will this research be useful? Those are questions that we want to ask ourselves as we think about a topic and the objectives. There are some cases where some prefer having the word gender in the topic, but it doesn't matter whether you have the word gender in your topic. What matters is whether, if we looked at your topic, are we able to understand what your key issue is, and whether your issue will be able to bring out the gender issues in your study. So when you are integrating, when you want to do gender focused research, you have to ensure that gender is integrated across all the different aspects of your research. And there are key considerations at every stage, which I'm going to run through. Right away. We start by literature review is like the first step. Ideally, for you to be able to design your study, you first read. You need to read and understand what is known about this topic I am even interested in. I know there are a number of things that we consider for us to choose a topic, ranging from interest, expertise, and other things. But you have to read about the topic. And as you read about the topic, you want to ask yourself, does the phenomenon that I'm reading about, how does it affect both sexes? In the studies being reviewed, has the role of women and men been given adequate attention? If I'm studying about family, have women and men been taken into account? Or these studies are largely looking at women in reproduction, because women are expected to be, do reproductive roles. They're expected to be around the home. What is it? How are they presenting, issues about family roles and reproduction? Does the literature address the issue of diversity among women, issue of having an intersectionality lens? Does the literature provide information on two sexes? What sex and gender disaggregated data is available? Is it qualitative? Is it quantitative? Is the language used gender neutral? Or does it reinforce the gender roles and stereotypes? In other words, is it sexist? Is the language sexist? Does it define the conceptual framework that is reflecting men's and women's experiences? Is the definition of concepts inclusive, avoiding male bias, avoiding prejudices, avoiding generalizations? What type of measurements that are captured in that data? Are there previous research projects that examine the topic? Because these questions help you to understand what is available and be able to identify the gaps as far as your topic is concerned, but from a gender perspective, not just generic identification of gaps. That is about literature review. And then there you will be able to, write your background, write your problem, and as you write it, you're also asking yourself different questions, mainly looking at whom does the issue, currently. Just a minute. Let's see the screen. Sorry. Yeah, as you write your problem and formulate your question, you're asking yourself, who does the issue affect currently? Just checking the time. Whom does the issue affect? How does the issue affect men and women differently? How have women and men already taken action to address this issue? Who will be affected by the research? How will this research affect men and women differently? What previous research has been conducted on the topic? Did that research take gender dimensions into consideration? What sex and gender disaggregated data is available on the topic? Those are key considerations as we, you're writing your research problem and developing your research question. And then, after you write your problem, then you formulate your research questions or hypothesis if you have mixed methods research, or if and you want to test your propositions, and you're asking yourself, does the research question include both sexes in areas that usually are seen relevant to the other? Does the research question take the male as the norm for both sexes? Because and that is sexism, so you want to avoid that. Does the research question take the family or household as the basic unit of analysis? We already talked about that as a problem. Does the research question assume that men and women are homogeneous? And then you move to the next stage where you are looking at the next stage of the methodology is developing your design and approach. And as you develop your design and approach, you definitely need to ask a number of questions to yourself. to make sure that your research design is gender focused, and you want to ask yourself if the phenomenon, if the situation, if the issue you are investigating affects both sexes, and so ensure that the research design adequately represents both sexes. And of the major variables that you are examining, are they equally relevant to women and men, or men alone? So that you don't, or generalize. Does the study take into account the potential different life situation of men and women, so that the methods, the design itself is cognizant of that? Is the same research focused method and approach used for both males and females? For instance, if you are holding, if you are doing a study on sensitive issues, and which require ideally to having separate sex groups, you need to be aware of that, so that you don't mix men and women in one group, and at the end of the day, you will not be able to get the results. So that you use an appropriate method. And then you need to ask yourself, is the sex of all participants in the study reported and controlled for? And for issues that deal with family or household, you ensure that you explore the differences in experiences of all members in the household, not taking, the family head to represent the other members of the family. And as I said earlier, in gender-focused research, we value use of qualitative methods and mixed methods, and that then it enables us to, have triangulate the quantitative and the qualitative aspects. The next is, after you've looked at your research design and you're happy with it, is what are the methods of data gathering? And also at this stage, you want to ask yourself a number of questions, so that your methods are actually gender sensitive, they are gender focused. You make sure that one of the things that we do in gender sensitive research, we value using multiple methods, because multiple methods allow you to triangulate the information. And as I said earlier, we value gender focused methods, methodology values methods that are empowering. And so you want to ask yourself, are the methods that have taken empowering or disempowering? How is the representation of representation and participation of men and women in the study? Has the research instrument been validated on diverse groups of both sexes? How gender sensitive are the instruments and tools? Or do the research instruments take one sex as the norm for both sexes? And you want to avoid that. Are the opinions asked of one sex about the other treated as a fact rather than an opinion? This is very important, because here we want to represent voices of the participants, the men and women, in particular women's voices that have been known to be muted in most of the social, conventional social research. Then you also want to ask yourself, are the same coding procedures used for males and females? Or you are discriminating, or you're using different coding procedures in your data management, data gathering, and data analysis. And then, of course, after research, the other stage is data analysis and data analysis and is data collection. And during data collection, you want to ensure that you deal with the power relations. The issue of reciprocity is important, especially with feminist research, sharing that you're not exploiting your research participants, but they are also able to learn from you, to learn from your engagement. You have not left them as they are. You have not just extracted information from them and left them. Then there is the issue of during data collection, there is the issue of the sex of the researcher. In terms of women interviewing men and men interviewing women, and vice versa, it is important. Sex of the researcher is very important. There is evidence that shows that women find it comfortable to talk to women as well as men also, and they are more open and willing to participate in interviews conducted by their fellow women, particularly, especially when you are dealing with sensitive matters. They are more willing to open up to their fellow women than men. And also in research with men, there's evidence to show that actually, men tend to prefer, male researchers to interview them than, female researchers, to avoid issues of minimizing, issues of sexualization, but also issues of controlling the whole interview process that may hinder communication between the researcher and the researched. So the sex of the interviewer is very important because they are concerns about interviewees' social locations and subjectivities that often may hinder the interaction between the interviewer and the researcher. If you're studying issues to do with the sensitive issues to do with gender-based violence, marital relations, HIV, or sexual orientation, all those sensitive issues, it is best. There's evidence that the sex of the interviewer sometimes can hinder communication if they are not the same sex. The research
Florence?
Environment also. Yes.
Sorry, Florence. Sorry to interrupt you. I hope that you can quickly come towards the close because we want to have adequate time for discussion as well. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I'll just I'm actually around towards the end. Let me just go through the research environment, and this one just refers to there's evidence that women tend to discuss their feelings about their lives, their roles more freely when it is private, when the men are not present. And I would think, and the same applies to the men. So the environment in which you conduct research matters. Understanding the social location of the social location of the participants, whether they are in an environment where they've not been coming out, where they are not allowed to go in public. And so being able to understand that, then that helps you on how to handle the interview process. The other, yes, these are the kinds of data that we need. We need sex disaggregated data. We need gender analytical data. Beyond having sex disaggregated data, we need information that provides data that provides information about what the cause of the differences is and how to address these differences. When reporting, we need to prioritize social change, clear articulation of the findings through the different forms of presentations, and making sure that we know our target, making sure that the message is accessible, making sure that we use strategies that reach men and women, making sure that our findings highlight the gender dimension, use a gender-sensitive language, and we are advocating for gender-sensitive practices. Beyond, producing knowledge, we need to give actions to address the gender biases, but also ourselves acknowledging our bias in research will help us to address collecting biased information. And of course, gender-focused research translates to presentation, women representation in research. We know that traditional gender social research has been male-centered, and therefore women are not there. In addition to collecting information about, men and generalized over, we know that women are underrepresented in most of the prestigious publications. They are underrepresented in research, and the raw representation is obviously about the fact that women are not there even in higher education, because research takes a lot of skill. You have to be at that level to do research, and because we don't have women are not highly represented in higher education, that then restricts their opportunities for publication. The issue of time poverty, research requires time, requires mobility, time to read, research, write, all of which is a major issue as far as women are concerned, and therefore we find that they are not there in research. And UNESCO in 2019, UNESCO did a survey, and it says that about 30% there is only 30% of women that are represented worldwide in research. And when you go down to Uganda, just about the same, 29.8% of the women are found are researchers. And so finally, that is like a checklist for gender sensitive research. And let me see what. Yeah. The other issue I wanted to talk about is briefly social work education, and I'm saying that social work education and practice as gender-focused research, they share the same concerns: commitment to social change and creation of an equal and just society. And therefore, it is critical that gender sensitivity is integrated in social work education, which requires, of course, having gender in the curriculum content, using pedagogical styles that allow for self-reflection and critical thinking, reduction of marginalization of women and minorities in class, and privileging male dominance, which is, common in social work. recognition of differences and being able to eliminate sexism, and allowing students to deconstruct the cultural representations of gender norms that are stereotypical and discriminatory. This will, help to have gender-sensitive social workers out there who are ready to create change and ensure equal and just society. I'm having trouble moving. So finally, what I would want to conclude with is to say that most methods of research can be used to attain gender-sensitive results and outcomes, and that gender-focused research assumes that knowledge is socially constructed, and that developing there's need for developing the most accurate, complete knowledge, which requires use of methods that reveal and embrace diversity in social experience. Thank you for your indulgence and for listening to me. Over to you, Genestic.
Wow.
You've
Thank
really
you
been
very,
good
very much.
listeners.
Thank you very much, Professor Florence. This was very, very informative, very detailed, and thank you for making it easy for everyone by going through the concepts and taking us, step by step, through the research process. I mean, I think the amount of content that you've shared today could actually take maybe a whole semester, to go through. So we appreciate the time constraints, but want to thank you so much for this elaborate presentation. We'll now have about 20 minutes. If you have any questions, any comments, please share them. But before I allow you to those of us that are putting up hands, I'll first read the comments that were coming in the chat, and then we can respond to those ones, and then we'll go to the rest of the audience. So Florence, I hope you have a pen, or should I could actually share my screen so that you look at the questions that have come in. Wow, where are the questions? Okay. Yeah, so let me try and increase this font. So the first question is, as researchers engage in gender-focused research, are they in danger of marginalizing their research as only women's issues when dealing with universal problems such as poverty and social exclusion? Number two is, if my study is purely targeting women, say experiences of circumcised women, how can I avoid issues or biases of sexism? If my study population is only men, with the purpose of understanding their perspective on a given issue, how can I make it more gender focused? Then the definition of feminist research includes research done by women. Doesn't this exclude men who may be interested in carrying out research in gender-related issues? 5, how do we avoid the risk of causing more gender-based violence in places where someone is not willing to let their spouse talk to a stranger privately? And finally, what would be the major ethical considerations a researcher would be looking at while carrying out gender-focused research? Florence, I'll ask you to respond to these ones, and then we can have another set of questions. Thank you. Florence? Florence,
sorry, I was speaking when I'm muted. Sorry about that. So the first question is about being in danger of marginalizing the research as women's issues when dealing with universal problems. And actually, I think I mentioned this, that gender sensitivity and gender focused research is not about women, is not about women. And so as a gender focused researcher, you want to avoid to minimize the general issues to women's issues. And you need to ensure that you pick the voices of both women and men, and also ensuring that you're looking at the different identities of women and men, having an intersectional lens, because these issues affect women and men differently. And so it is important to not to minimize those universal issues to women's issues, which is sometimes a misunderstanding between what gender means and what where women come in. So the second question, genetic. The second question, yes, is about if my study is purely targeting women, say experiences of women, of circumcised women, how can I avoid issues of biases, of sexism? Sexism is not about studying one gender. Sexism here in this case, I think you mean looking at women alone. Where sexism comes in is where you are generalizing. You have studied women, but you are generalizing experiences of circumcision to also include men. So you must remain within context. If you are studying about women, the experiences, your presentation of findings should refer to women. And if you want to understand men's perceptions about circumcision of women, it's also okay. You can have them be part of your study.
Okay. Question number 3.
If my study population is only men with the purpose of understanding their perspective on a given issue, how can I make it more gender focused? It's more or less like the second. Yeah. You make sure you don't generalize the experiences of men over women. But you can interview men, you can interview women to get their perspectives about men, but present them as views from the women and present men's views as men's views.
Thank you. Number 4.
The fourth one is a definition of feminist research includes research done by women. Doesn't this exclude men who may be interested in carrying out gender-related issues? I talked about there is a difference between feminist research and gender-focused research. So if you are doing gender-focused research, you are looking at women's experiences and the social relations around them. But if you are looking at feminist research, you are looking at research about women's conditions, and usually it is done by women, and on women. And that doesn't mean that you are going to exclude your exclusion of men. Excluding men, rather feminist research, because it says it is research done by women, that it doesn't mean you're excluding men. The issue around having women doing research came in as a critique of what was happening in conventional research. where most of research, social research was done by men, and where women's voices and their experiences were not being brought on board. So men can do gender-focused research and address issues relating to women and men, but women do feminist research. How do women avoid the risk of causing more gender-based violence in places where someone is not willing to let their spouse talk to a stranger? Yeah, these are contentious issues in research, and in most cases where you find that the spouse is not willing to allow the wife to talk to a stranger, it means there are also issues in that home. There is already gender-based violence, and so you need to be very strategic. You need to have consent. You need to have rapport with the spouse, and ensure that you are able to achieve your goal. Ensure that you are able to talk to the wife. The way you enter the field, the way you enter that household where your respondent is important. And I'm sure once you gain consent, you should be able to have the woman talk to you. What would be the major ethical consideration as a researcher while carrying out gender-focused research? Ethical considerations as far as gender-focused research are concerned are the usual ethical issues that we take into account. But being conscious about the issue of what the other question raised about a stranger, the issue of privacy, the issue of confidentiality, the issue of understanding the social location of the woman you are going to interview, and being able to navigate the conditions and the situation that the women you're going to interview who are part of your study are concerned. Otherwise, the ethics are the same. What is important is taking into account the feminist principles of ensuring that you're dealing with the power relations, making sure that you use the methods that are empowering, making sure that your methods are participatory, and making sure that taking into account the sex of the researcher. And they do no harm principle of research ethics. I'm conducting a research that has an objective of finding out reasons as to why the existing family planning methods have not been so successful in addressing teenage pregnancy, leading to repeated teenage births. And I think both sexes should contribute to finding out these reasons. How can my research be more gender focused and gender sensitive when handling such an objective? So your issue is about family planning, then teenage pregnancy, and here you have different categories of participants. That is the starting point. What is your target population? So you have to define your target population and the kind of information that you want from each. Of course, getting the views from both sexes is very important, because it takes two to make a baby. But also getting the significant other within the community, those who influence teenagers in terms of having to take the family planning methods is very key. Is very key as you decide on how to handle this. So yes, both sexes is important, but also you need to define the target population and the kind of information by being also conscious about the influence, the influence that those different participants have on the use of family planning methods. As we focus on reducing GBV in societies, there is need to change social roles right away from parenting styles and behaviors. The issue of saying we need gender balance while giving out handouts to victims of GBV wouldn't be effective. Rather, we should focus on creating an environment that is directed towards realizing gender balance. That is perfectly okay. Providing handouts does not transform the structures, does not transform the social norms that are known to cause gender-based violence. So addressing the structures and the norms, which are the root causes of gender-based violence, is more effective than providing handouts. You are very right. I totally agree with you. Since some of my participants may be victims of child marriage, their spouses may not be interested in participating owing to being in contact with the law. I don't understand this, but what I can say, I've done studies on child marriage and in rural Uganda, and of course there is that fear of being against the law. What you need to do is to be conscious about it and to use methods that will help you to get in contact with those participants. Usually we use snowball, and the way you introduce the subject is also key. If you come into the community and you go through the local leadership, they identify for you the participants is important. Also building trust, where participants will not fear you that you are going to report them or not. If they know that you've come to do a study and you're going away, you're not going to report them, you'll be able to get them. In the studies that I've done on teenage pregnancy and child marriage, we've not had issues with getting participants. It is a contentious issue, but it depends where you are, where you go, and how you enter into the community. If you enter into the community with a trusted person, then you are able to engage with your participants, especially the boys who are married to young girls. Number 10, in my research, one of the respondents are women GB survivors groups. So it is good practice for me to make a lady.
Is it good practice?
Is it good practice for me to make a lady, interview them for me to get the best and free response? Yes. As I said, when you are working with women, they are free to talk to their fellow women. So usually we recommend that you have research assistants who are women and they are able to engage with their fellow women. And usually also you want to look at the age group. If the study is dealing with old women, you don't want to have research assistants who are young, because then it creates the issue of power relations and age difference, and it can block communication. So in addition to looking at the sex of the researcher, it is also important that you also consider the age. But this is also depending on the topic.
I think you don't have to answer maybe question 11. I don't know, maybe you can answer it, but sorry.
Number 11 is a whole paper.
Exactly.
It is a whole paper about, there are several initiatives, but we are not seeing. But then what I can summarize it is that most of these initiatives are not gender transformative. They are not dealing with the root causes of gender inequalities. They are not dealing with identifying, questioning, and challenging those social structures and systems that continue to create gender imbalances. Question 12.
Yes.
I have appreciated the aspect of intersectionality lens, because the assumption that all people face uniform challenges make it hard and the results into multiple jeopardy. This aspect has not been unpacked in most of the studies or researches conducted. And this is, I agree with you, and this is the beauty of gender-focused research. And here I'm not meaning that all gender-focused researches have intersectionality, but I'm saying that, if you have to do a good job as far as gender-focused research is concerned, you must have the intersectionality lens, because experiences are different for the different categories of women, and women are not homogeneous. We cannot put them in one basket and say, they're experiencing the world the same way. So intersectionality lens definitely is very key. Gender transformative research is very well intentioned, looking at its mission and goals. I agree with you. From the inclusivity and equality, if I should say, from the presentation and discussions around gender issues, have so much seemed to lean a lot towards the women being taken into account, leaving out men. How do we make sure that as we push for this wonderful idea, we actually stick to the initial goal of inclusivity rather than oppression and or exclusion of the male? The ball is in your court. Once you know what gender transformation, gender sensitivity means, it is to make sure that you take that, you take into account the both genders, and know that women do not live in isolation. They are living in social relations with the men, and ensure that you contextualize the methods and the way you design your research. Make sure you don't generalize. You make sure that you define your target group based on the issues that you are looking at, and ensure that you include men where you think the information you need is relevant to the issue that you're dealing with. There is where you are studying an issue, and you find that actually male voices may not add value to what you want, and so it doesn't matter. As what you need to avoid is to generalize the findings over another sex whom you've not who has not been part of your study. That will give a wrong impression. What should be key approaches to refer to in order to indigenize research, gender research in societies where sexism has been playing a great role? I'm not clear what indigenize means here. What should be the role of women researchers themselves in promoting their involvement in the research? process. You know, sexism is being conscious, really. We as researchers, we need to be conscious, but also we need to understand what sexism is, because if some people have you know, have sexist researches because they do not understand what it means. So understanding what sexist research is important, so that you try to avoid it as much as possible, so that your research is balanced and presents issues as they should be, presents voices as you've picked them from your study participants. What was the last thing?
That was the last. Thank you so much.
All right, yeah.
Thank you so much. A round of applause for Florence. Thank you so much. 2 hours speaking non-stop is not easy. We allow you to take some water. I know you're at home, but once again, would like to thank you very, very much. And I know that participants still had many questions, but I even stopped sharing so that no one dares to ask another question. Yeah, so I'm going to request, so once again, thank you, Florence. I'm going to request our principal investigator, Professor Anne-Christine, to give us closing remarks. Thank you, Christine. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Genestic, and thank you, Florence, for a wonderful presentation. I think this was very interesting and very useful for us. And it's definitely food for thought. So I think we'll bring many of these perspectives with us as we proceed in this project and also in other research that we are conducting. And particularly, I also enjoyed listening or seeing the questions that were raised. Now, these are very good and relevant questions that we should. I'm glad that you wrote them down, Genestic, and that you copied them so that we can save them for further discussion. So I think as time has already run out, I should just wrap this up by saying that we have 2 new webinars coming up that we would like to invite you to attend. The first webinar is on September 22nd. We have invited Hilde Afdal, who is a professor at University College of Østfold in Norway, and she will give a talk about how to conduct a literature review. So that will be more of a methodological webinar. And the other webinar is, I think perhaps I should invite Zena to say more about that. That is a webinar that will take place on 27th September, where she will present one of the toolkits and the ideas behind the social labs approach. So I don't know if you would like to add something, Zena, to that. So over to you.
No, and I think you have just introduced the forthcoming webinars, and yes, we from Tanzania and will be presenting a toolkit about the community social labs, which is a new methodology that we are trying to pilot and use in fieldwork practice for our students, both at master's and bachelor's degree level. And this methodology is being applied in Makerere University, in Tanzania, Institute of Social Work, and in Rwanda also. So, and the lead actually on this is Dr. Genestic, Associate Professor Genestic Chikirize, but for now, we as Tanzania will lead in the presentation, and others, I will be calling them upon to contribute their ideas into that. So that's it. Thank you, I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's okay, yes. We can provide, there will be more information online, I think. So thank you very much, Florence. Thank you, Gymnastic, for a wonderful facilitation, and thank not least to all the participants who raised important questions and contributed to a very fruitful webinar.